Hi everybody, and an early Chag Sameach. Shavuot starts this Sunday night, the two-day festival outside of Israel that celebrates the receiving of the Torah and the culmination of counting the Omer over the last 7 weeks. Can you believe it? It's been 7 weeks since Passover. And here we are, coming up to the 6th of Sivan again, 50 days after Passover and Shavuot. I decided to put a little video together for you. Shavuot is one of those holidays that I always say it's kind of low on the list of our collective consciousness. There aren't a lot of rituals, there aren't a lot of symbols. Think about it. Know any good Shavuot songs? Not really. So it never hurts every year at this time to have a little Shavuot primer, a quick refresher on the main things we need in order to celebrate this holiday, because it's more than just ice cream. And a few years back, I think it was through the help of Wikipedia actually, I learned a little mnemonic device, a 5-letter Hebrew word that helps us remember all of the things you need to really know about Shavuot in order to practice it. So here we go. The word is acharit. Aleph, Chet, Resh, Yud, Taf. I even brought my letters. Aleph, Chet, Resh, Yud, Taf. Acharit means last, which is kind of because like when you rank all the holidays, it kind of falls last in terms of remembering what to do, which is such a shame because Shavuot, after all, celebrates Har Sinai and receiving the Torah. Though I think we think of Simchat Torah as more of the Torah holiday and less Shavuot. But that's not the point. So, our Acharit mnemonic, how does it help us? Here we go. Aleph. Aleph stands for Akdamut. You may have never heard that before. Probably haven't. Akdamut is this long poem written 1,000 years ago by a cantor who was living in Worms, Germany during the time of the Crusades. And he wrote it to kind of unite his people, because you know how terrible the Crusades were for the Jews of Eastern Europe and Jews of Germany. He wrote it as an introduction to the Torah reading on the morning of Shavuot because the Torah reading contains the 10 Commandments, and this cantor felt that that was such an important reading that it was worthy of an introduction. So he wrote this really long poem that we still do in some versions in a lot of synagogues, like ours, called Akdamut, because the first words are Akdamut Milin. You can hear us do a version of it on Monday morning as part of this service. That's the Aleph. Chet. Chalav. Dairy. This is the one that everybody knows. The cheesecakes, the blintzes, the kugel, the knishes. Dairy is a huge part. It's the main food for Ashkenazic Jews when it comes to Shavuot. The question is why? As familiar as dairy is for Shavuot, do we really know why? Well, there's a few explanations. The fact that it's a Torah holiday and the Torah always talks about Israel being land flowing with milk and honey. That's one of the explanations, though I've always said that would make more sense if we had milk and honey for our Shavuot food, but I guess all the honey got taken up by Rosh Hashanah and the apples and honey. So yeah, that's possible for sure. It could also be something practical that at this time in the spring that there's a lot of dairy in abundance in the area of the Middle East. A lot of animals that produce dairy are that's like right in their big season, so it could just be good timing. But there are 2 other stories for the chalav. One is that when Bnei Israel were at Mount Sinai, they were there for a few days, and when they got back to camp, all of their milk had soured and turned into cheese. So we eat cheese as a result. Possibly. Another story is that when Bnei Israel were at Har Sinai, they had all this meat back at the camp, but of course, before they received the Torah, they didn't have the laws of kashrut. And after they received the laws of the Torah, they then had the laws of kashrut and realized that all their meat back at camp was no longer kosher, so they couldn't eat it and had to eat the dairy products instead. Regardless, it gives us our chet chalav. Resh. Acharit, Resh, root. The book of Ruth. Megillat Ruth. There are 5 Megillot in the Bible, each one associated with a different holiday. On Tisha B'Av, we read Echa. On Purim, we read Esther. On Sukkot, we read Kohelet. On Pesach, we read Shir HaShirim. And on Shavuot, we're supposed to read in the synagogue Megillat Ruth. The 4-chapter incredible story. I think it's one of the most underrated books of the Bible. It is so good. It's really more of a short story. It's only 4 chapters. It's set during the harvest season around Shavuot and the time between Pesach and Shavuot. That's the connection. But Ruth is an incredible character, so much to learn from, and often regarded as the first convert to Judaism, with this incredible line when she follows her mother-in-law Naomi back to Israel, back to Bethlehem, and says, "Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." The order of that statement, of course, is very interesting because a lot of people will have different opinions about Judaism. Is it more about people and community? Is it more about God and religion? Of course, it's both, but Ruth's order, "Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God," is one of those lines that definitely brings us some conversation. Of course, we're supposed to read Ruth on Shavuot. It is the Resh. Yud. This is one we don't know as well, but it's Yerek, greenery, vegetation. It's more common in Israel to bring in, because of the season, everything turning green, to bring in green leaves and green branches and rose petals and really decorate the bima at synagogues. The reason is that when Bnei Israel were at Har Sinai, the mountain was going crazy. It was shaking. It was quaking. It was smoking. It was going nuts, but it was also blossoming like crazy. Tons of green, tons of flowers. When Bnei Israel were at Har Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments and to receive the Torah, and we remember that by decorating synagogues and bimas. That's Yud. Yerek. And finally, Taf. You may be thinking the Taf is for Torah, but it's not. The Taf is for Tikkun. Tikkun Leil Shavuot. This custom of staying up all night, the night of Shavuot, until the hours of the morning and the sunrise, and then having a service to celebrate, reenact receiving the Torah. The story behind this one is great. Bnei Israel, the night before receiving the Torah, overslept, missed their alarm. They were late. I know how panicked I am when I wake up in the morning, miss my alarm. So the idea was, we will never be late for reenacting receiving the Torah again. We will stay up all night studying Torah, not go to bed, and that's why we will never miss it. So we have an all-night study session called Tikkun Leil Shavuot. Acharit, Akdamut, Chalav, Root, Yerek, and Tikkun. And now, in 7 minutes, you're ready for Shavuot. Chag Sameach.